The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder on a clear day, causing Judge Miller to stop leafing through the documents and look up over his glasses. Leo was only 9 years old, but his voice cut through the formal silence of the family courtroom like a sharp blade. He stood next to his mother, Clara, who looked at him with a mixture of pride and terror, while across the room, Alexander Vance, his biological father, almost choked on his coffee. "I'm sorry, young man, but this is a legal hearing between adults," said the judge with forced patience, looking at the skinny boy in glasses who dared to interrupt a $1 million custody case. "I know, Your Honor." "I also know that, according to Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by the United States, I have the right to express my opinion on matters that directly affect me." Leo adjusted his glasses and opened a scribbled school notebook. "And this case definitely affects me." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander Vance, Chicago real estate mogul, wearing a suit that cost more than Clara earned in 6 months, looked at his two expensive lawyers as if he wanted to strangle them. No one had prepared the ground to face a child, quoting international law. Clara worked 60 hours a week as a nursing assistant to raise Leo on her own. In the 8 years since Alexander discovered he was a father, he had appeared in the boy's life exactly 4 times, always with expensive gifts and empty promises. Now suddenly he wanted full custody. "Your Honor," Alexander's lead attorney, Mr. Sterling interjected, adjusting his tie knot, "this is highly irregular. The child has no legal capacity to—" Article 12 doesn't mention anything about legal capacity, only the capacity to form his own views. Leo interrupted him with a calmness that made several adults in the room shift uncomfortably. "And if you really cared about my well-being, you would want to hear what I have to say rather than trying to silence me." Alexander leaned over to whisper something urgent in Mr. Sterling's ear, but Leo continued, opening his notebook with precise movements. "Your Honor, I have prepared a documented presentation on why I should remain with my mother, including evidence of the petitioner's true motives." He paused, his eyes meeting Alexander's for the first time. "Motives that I believe the court will find very enlightening." Alexander's face paled visibly. What exactly had this boy discovered? "Your Honor," Mr. Sterling continued, "my client, Alexander Vance, is seeking custody because he is genuinely concerned about the welfare of his son, Miss Clara, while well-meaning, simply does not have the resources to provide the educational and social opportunities that a gifted child like Leo deserves." "Interesting," Leo muttered, opening his notebook again. "Genuine concern." He flipped through a few scribbled pages. "Your Honor, may I share some facts about this genuine concern?" "Leo," Clara said softly, "maybe we should let the lawyers—" "What lawyers, Mom?" Leo interrupted her gently. "We can't afford to hire Mr. Sterling or his colleagues. So either I speak for us or no one speaks." Alexander Vance finally found his voice. "Leo, son, I know this situation is confusing for you, but—" "Don't call me son," the words came out, with a coldness that made several adults in the room shiver. "In the last 9 years of my life, you've shown up exactly 4 times. 2 on birthdays, always 3 weeks late. 1 at Christmas when you had 20 minutes free between social engagements, and 1 when the local press did a story on philanthropic entrepreneurs, and you needed a photo with a child." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander opened his mouth to protest, but Leo continued. "The last time we saw each other 6 months ago, you spent 15 minutes in our apartment, just long enough to criticize our furniture, complain about the medicine smell my mother brings home from a hospital, and suggest that I might have potential. If I received a proper education," Leo adjusted his glasses. "Interestingly, 2 weeks after that you filed for custody." Mr. Sterling whispered something urgent to Alexander, but the boy wasn't finished. "Your Honor, I've done some research on my biological father. I discovered that he recently lost a very expensive lawsuit against his business partners. I discovered that his 3rd wife has filed for a contested divorce. And I discovered something very interesting about a trust fund established by my late paternal grandmother." Alexander Vance's face went from pink to white in a matter of seconds. Leo turned a page in his notebook and smiled. For the first time since entering the courtroom, it wasn't the innocent smile of a child. It was the smile of someone who was holding winning cards and was ready to play them. But before we talk about inheritances and financial motives, Leo said, closing his notebook again, how about we discuss why a man who never showed any genuine interest in being a father suddenly developed such a strong paternal instinct? Alexander Vance was visibly sweating now, and his expensive lawyers looked completely lost. Judge Miller leaned forward, his judicial curiosity clearly piqued. Leo, you mentioned evidence. What kind of evidence could a 9-year-old have gathered? Leo adjusted his glasses again. Your Honor, for the past 3 months since I learned of this lawsuit, I have devoted every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon to researching at the Central Public Library. Researching what? Mr. Sterling interrupted condescendingly. Public records, newspaper archives, available corporate documents. Mr. Vance's previous court cases. Leo opened a new section of his notebook. The head librarian, Miss Gibson, has a master's degree in information science and taught me how to access basic legal databases. Clara looked at her son in amazement. Alexander Vance finally exploded. This is ridiculous. A 9-year-old boy digging into my private life, like some kind of private investigator? Public information, sir, Leo corrected calmly. Miss Gibson had become much more than a librarian to Leo. Leo continued his presentation methodically. I've discovered that in the last 18 months, Mr. Vance has faced 3 significant lawsuits. He lost a $2.3 million dispute with former partners in Vance Enterprises. His current wife, his third, has filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Legal code for he hid money from me? Alexander's face was red with anger. How dare you? And more interestingly, Leo interrupted, turning pages methodically, I discovered that my late paternal grandmother, Eleanor Vance, established a trust fund of $1.7 million specifically for me, accessible only when I turn 18 or when my biological father obtains full legal custody. The silence in the room was absolute. Mr. Sterling whispered something urgent to Alexander, who ignored him completely. Your Honor, this is no coincidence, Leo continued. My grandmother died when I was 2 years old. For 7 years, Mr. Vance never mentioned my existence to her, never took me to meet her, never allowed her to know she had a grandson. Clara remembered it perfectly. Alexander had been categorical, but when Mrs. Eleanor Vance discovered about me through private investigation, something I discovered in the estate records, she immediately set up the fund, with one very specific condition. Leo paused dramatically. The money would be released for my care and education only if my father demonstrated genuine commitment to the child's welfare by obtaining legal custody. If he never sought custody, the money would go directly to me at age 18 with no parental access whatsoever. The math was simple and cruel, but there's something my grandmother couldn't have foreseen, Leo said, closing his notebook. She didn't know her son would develop a career in ruining small family businesses through predatory practices. Mr. Sterling stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is getting completely out of hand. The child is making baseless accusations. I can prove everything on. Saying, Leo opened his school backpack and pulled out a surprisingly organized manila folder. I have here copies of 17 lawsuits over the past 5 years where Vance Enterprises purchased properties from financially distressed families for well below market value using insider information. One of these families, Leo continued, pulling printed photos from the folder, owned a small bakery. The Santos family, Mexican immigrants who worked 18 hours a day. Mr. Vance found out through his friend at the bank that they were 3 months behind on their loan due to the emergency hospitalization of their youngest son. Alexander Vance was now visibly sweating. This has nothing to do with. It has everything to do with it, Leo interrupted, because it shows a pattern of behavior. A man who preys on vulnerable families for financial gain. And now he's trying to prey on his own vulnerable family for the same reason? Judge Miller leafed through the documents Leo had presented. About education, he said, opening a final section of the notebook. I would like to share Mr. Vance's true educational plans for me. Alexander Vance swallowed hard. During one of my 4 visits to him over the past 9 years, Leo continued methodically. I overheard a very interesting phone conversation. Mr. Vance was talking to someone about solving the child problem after obtaining custody. Mr. Sterling stood up abruptly. Your Honor, private conversations cannot— I can prove every word, Leo interrupted, pulling a small digital recorder from his briefcase. Ms. Gibson taught me that documenting evidence is fundamental to any legal case. The silence that followed was deafening. This recording was made during his last visit to our apartment 6 months ago, Leo explained calmly to the judge. Mr. Vance thought I was doing my homework in my room, but the recorder was left on in the living room. Judge Miller picked up the device. Leo, are you sure you want to present this as evidence? Absolutely certain, Your Honor. The sound of the recording echoed through the silent courtroom. The unmistakable voice of Alexander Vance spoke into the phone. Listen, as soon as I get legal custody, the boy is going straight to Riverside Military Academy. It's a strict boarding school in Colorado. They know how to handle troubled children. He'll stay there until he's 18, and I'll have full access to the inheritance funds for educational expenses. The other person's voice was inaudible, but Alexander continued. Exactly. $500 a month for boarding. The rest is mine. The kid doesn't even have to know about the money. It's a perfect solution. She's out of the picture. I have access to the funds, and I still look like a responsible father. Clara covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. There's more, Leo said calmly, stopping the recording. This part is about what he really thinks of me. The second part of the recording was even more devastating. The problem isn't just the money. It's that the boy is too smart for his own good. He asks questions, observes everything. It would be best to keep him out of the picture until he's 18 and I can sort out the financial situation. Kids like him, well, we don't want him getting any ideas above his station. Alexander Vance exploded. This is a trap. He provoked me on purpose. A 9-year-old boy can't— A 9-year-old can't what? Leo interrupted him, his voice cutting like a knife. Can't be smart? Can't defend himself? Can't expose the truth about a father who sees him as a problem to be solved? Judge Miller turned off the tape recorder and looked directly at Alexander Vance. Mr. Vance, this recording combined with the financial evidence presented paints a very clear picture of your true motivations. Your Honor, Leo continued, I have also discovered that Riverside Military Academy has a terrible track record. In the last 5 years, 3 students have committed suicide there. The institution is under federal investigation for physical and emotional abuse of minors. Mr. Sterling tried one last desperate card. Your Honor, even considering these allegations, the fact remains that my client has superior financial resources. To do what? Leo interrupted him. To send me to a place where children die? To use my inheritance money while pretending to care about me? To isolate me from the only person who truly loves me? Alexander Vance finally lost his composure completely. You're nothing but an arrogant child who doesn't know his place. I'm your father, and you're a stranger who shares my DNA. Leo replied with a calmness that sent a chill through the room. A real father wouldn't try to get rid of his own son to steal his money. The judge banged his gavel to restore order. Mr. Vance, sit down immediately or you will be removed from my courtroom. Leo turned to the last page of his notebook. Your Honor, there is one last thing I need to mention. Something I discovered about why my grandmother really set up that trust fund. Alexander Vance paled even more if that was possible. I found a letter from her in the estate files. A letter addressed to me to be opened when I turned 16. Leo took a deep breath. But the librarian helped me find out that I can request early access in cases of custody disputes. The final bombshell was about to drop. My grandmother wrote that she knew Alexander was never a good father, that she established the trust specifically to protect me from him, and that if he ever tried to get custody of me just for the money, I should use every resource in the trust to defend myself. Leo closed the notebook, and looked directly at Alexander Vance. She even hired private investigators who documented all of his financial schemes over the years. It's all on file with the funds administrator. Alexander Vance slumped in his chair. Judge Miller banged his gavel. Based on all the evidence presented, including financial documents, recordings, and the plaintiff's demonstrated history, the custody request is categorically denied. Furthermore, I order a full investigation into the possible fraudulent use of trust funds. Mr. Sterling whispered urgently to Alexander, but it was obvious that the case was irretrievably lost. Leo methodically put away his materials. Your Honor, may I make one last request? You may, Leo. I would like Mr. Vance to know that I did not do this out of anger or revenge. I did it because every child deserves to have a family that truly loves them, not one that sees them as a financial opportunity. As Alexander Vance left the room escorted by security guards, the judge had ordered his immediate arrest for attempted fraud. Leo finally allowed a small smile to appear on his face. 3 years have passed since that historic day in court. Today we welcome 12-year-old Leo, who 3 years ago shocked the country by defending his mother in court using only his wits in a public library, announced the host of America's most watched morning show. Leo, how does it feel to be called the smartest kid in America? Leo, now taller and wearing new glasses, but still as calm as ever, smiled. I'd rather just be called Leo, who learned that every child has a voice, even when adults pretend not to listen. The studio audience burst into emotional applause. Clara watched from backstage wearing her nursing supervisor's uniform. His mother is here with us today, the host continued. Clara, how does it feel to see your son become an inspiration to millions of families? Clara joined them on stage. Leo has always been special. But what makes me most proud is not his intelligence, it's his heart. Leo, tell me about the cool law library project you started, the host asked. Well, after I saw how a public library saved me, I thought how many other kids are going through similar situations without knowing where to turn for help? Leo adjusted his glasses. We created small sections in 1,200 public libraries with children's rights books in simple language, as well as computers with free access to basic legal resources. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander Vance watched the television program from his small studio apartment. His hair was gray, his clothes simple, and he worked as a salesman at an electronics store. The kids on the show again, he muttered to himself, turning off the television in anger. Back in the television studio, the host asked her final question. Leo, what advice would you give to other children who are facing difficult family situations? Leo thought for a moment, then looked directly into the camera. First, you are not alone. Second, you have more power than you know. And third, the truth always finds a way to win, even when it seems impossible. He paused. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too small to make a difference. I was 9 years old when I changed my life and my mother's life forever. You can change yours too. 6 months later, Leo received a special letter. It was from Isabella Rodriguez, a 10-year-old girl from Los Angeles who had used the Cool Law Libraries project to help her immigrant grandmother avoid an unfair eviction. The letter ended with, "Thank you for teaching me that every child has a voice. I used mine and saved my family." Clara found Leo reading the letter in his room, surrounded by hundreds of similar letters from children across the country. How does it feel to know that your courage has inspired so many people? She asked. Leo carefully folded Isabella's letter. Remember when you told me that sometimes the scariest things in life turn out to be the most important? Clara nodded. I think I understand now. If Alexander Vance had never tried to tear us apart, I would never have discovered that a child can change the world when adults stop underestimating them. That same day, Leo received a call that would change his life again. Harvard University was offering a full scholarship to a special program in law and social justice. Will you accept? Clara asked after Leo hung up the phone. I accept, Leo smiled, but on one condition. I want to use my education to create a legal system that protects all children, not just those who are lucky enough to be smart enough to protect themselves. Years later, when Leo became the youngest lawyer ever admitted to the bar at the age of 16, his first case was a lawsuit against the educational system for failing to teach basic children's rights in public schools. He won. Alexander Vance never fully recovered from his downfall. In moments of honesty with himself, he recognized that Leo had become exactly the kind of man he himself had never been able to be. Leo's greatest revenge was not destroying Alexander Vance. It was building a legacy that would save thousands of families from the same injustices he had faced.